Episode 12 with Franco Torres will now go into what I think is one of the more interesting topics. English as a second language is something that most of us that have grown up here have not had to experience. Yet, for Franco moving from South America to Australia, this was something that was very real for him and very real for a lot of people that have to move city or country, whether it's here or whether it's overseas. Understanding the barriers that people have when they move overseas purely with language is something that I think is fascinating to go into. Furthermore, starting a business and understanding culture is something that Franco is not shy to go into. Anyways, let's get to the show. Speaking of that, how are you actually feeling?
I'm feeling, I think this game worked. I feel more relaxed. I do feel, I don't know if it's happy, I feel content and I feel excited about what's coming, working on a few things, and that keeps me, quite excited.
You mentioned only 10 minutes ago that you were shitting yourself and you were nervous.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, that game changed it all.
So it's interesting how like a simple game like that can change your complete emotions. Prior to coming in today, like what was it about doing a podcast and sitting in front of someone that you already know that was nerve-wracking?
Well, specifically this podcast, because it's quite, we talk about quite challenging situations we've gone through. So it's never easy to talk about those topics. But I've learned to open up myself and talk about that, especially with mates that I know they will listen to, like you.
It's interesting. Like I feel that for you to be able to switch into gear and have now gone to the stage where you're fully present and open is something that's not easy for you to do. But I guess you would have had to have gotten used to that simply by your journey. And I know your journey, and we're going to go into that today. You weren't born in Australia, you were born overseas. And I'd love for people that are listening, because most of them are going to be born here, I'd love them to get an idea of what your upbringing was like and in your environment was like, because South America would have been very different to Melbourne or Sydney or wherever people are listening to.
Yeah. So I was born in Argentina, in Buenos Aires, particularly. My upbringing was, to be honest, pretty good. Like, my family is composed by my mom, my dad, and my older brother. We are all very supportive with each other. There was always love in my household.
What about the external environment? So let's say
Yep.
here, we leave this podcast, I go across the road to Coles, no stress, no dramas. Is Argentina the exact same? Do you have to worry about certain streets or suburbs? Are there things that maybe we take for granted or, aren't aware of that, you would have had a little bit differently?
Yeah, there are definitely things I feel people here take for granted, and I do take for granted now that I've been living here for 6 years. So back in Argentina, what happened is it's a very dynamic country in a way that everything can change from one day to the other. There is always something going on, some kind of problem, and on one end it's quite stressful, but on the other side it helps you being more resilient and being adaptable. So I'm quite grateful that I grew up in Argentina because of that. I feel like now I could go through anything pretty much.
Why is it that you're more resilient growing up in Argentina? What about the landscape, makes you have to be more resilient?
Well, you have to be a bit more aware of your surroundings, because there are some places which are dangerous. Apart from that, there was always that kind of conversation about money, if we would have enough, if the presidency changes and we'll be poor, or you can be poor from one day to the other, you could be rich from one day to the other. That sounds exciting, but it's fearful at the same time.
Dangerous is interesting because obviously here we don't have risk of, or a very, very low risk of people carrying guns and weapons and having any sort of dramas unfold just out on the street. I guess growing up in Argentina, that's a little bit of a different kettle of fish. And I know that, someone like yourself, having grown up there's seen a lot. There was a really interesting thing that I heard you say, and that you've written to me once before, is that I guess you can choose to let fear rule you, right? Or you can choose to rule your fear. Now, there was an event that I know you've shared with me before that happened in Argentina, where I can't imagine how afraid you would have been. I would have been fucking shitting myself, man. Like, wouldn't have known what to do. Can you give people that are listening at home a little insight into what you had to go through and the fear that you faced?
Yeah. Without going too deep, because it could be a super long story.
Go for it, man.
Yeah?
Yeah,
Okay.
go for it. Fuck it. Just say it as it happened.
Okay. So when I was 10 years old, we got into a situation as a family that was pretty scary. So we were running back home after having dinner at a restaurant, and all of a sudden we got crashed by 2 cars, and I was sleeping at that time. Reason why I can't sleep in a car right now. And 8 people just with machine guns and automatic guns, they approach our car. So my dad thought, well, they want the car, So he said, okay, unlock the car and just give it to them, It has insurance, whatever. As soon as he did that, some of the guys, they took my mom, and I could see my dad wrestling and fighting with the rest. My brother, which is who is 5 years older than me, at that time he was 15, I was 10. In a heroic act, he locked the car, and so they couldn't, kind of like they forgot about us. And as I said before, some of the guys took my mom into another car. My dad was fighting with them, and all of a sudden, someone, I guess, from a balcony started shooting to the air, just as a warning, like as a warning sign. And that was when everything went crazy. I think there were like 200 bullets. Next day, someone took it to the police station, like a bag of 200 bullets. Like, everyone went crazy. So at that point, what you think is, okay, they killed them all, that's it. And all of a sudden, the guys ran away, and I could see my dad, bleeding, coming back to the car and saying, "Hey guys, are you okay?" I said, "Yeah, we are okay, but they took mom." And we could see the car like 2 blocks away. So what would you do at that point? Like, they've taken your mom. What do? Like, you almost die. Let's just start chasing them. So that's what we did. We went just right behind them, to a point where we almost caught up with them, and we saw that they pushed my mom out of the car. And the side of the story of my mom is that she thought at that point, after they pushed her, they were gonna, shoot her. But luckily, no. So we picked up my mom, and we got together, and that was pretty much it. We went back home. Of course, there was a lot of crying, and it was pretty hard. It was pretty hard because I couldn't separate from my mom for that following year. For the rest of the year, she wanted to go to do groceries. I had to go with her, and I was 10 years old. Like, I gotta protect you. My mom was like, whatever. So that situation taught me a few lessons. First of all, you either, as you said before, you either let fear rule you, or you rule the fear. And I guess at the point where we had to decide if we were gonna chase the guys or not, I think that's when we took the decision that we didn't want fear to rule us, and we went for it. And that's why I also say that, you know, those type of situations shaped you and show you somehow how fragile life is, you know. So I got to enjoy every second of it after that. It's kind of like I'm living in extra time, so I'm gonna do my best.
That's one way to think about it. You're living in extra time. Your experience is something that I don't think anyone that's listening could ever resonate with. But the emotion or the feeling of being afraid, independent of the event, is something that people may have felt before, right? When you're 10 years old and you go through something like that, and I don't believe you would have seen psychologists or maybe you did, I don't know. Did you?
I didn't actually.
Right. So you've gone through something heavy and you're 10 and you don't bother seeing anyone because that's not what you did and that's not what happened. What were some of the things that you had to battle with and thoughts that you had to go through in order to, I guess, move past that event? Not move past it, but understand it better.
You know what? At that age, I was not conscious about it. I think I just moved on, you know? The only thing is I wanted to look after my mom as much as I could. So I will, follow her everywhere, as I mentioned before. But I wasn't conscious that it was a situation that I had to, you know, get over it. But now looking back, I do realize that I carried a lot of that fear with me over the following years, that maybe made me dwell about taking certain decisions. But yeah, I wasn't quite conscious at that time, and never thought about that, you know, psychology, like seeing a psychologist at that point. It would have been nice.
What, you know, you said you still can't sleep in a car.
Yeah.
Have you thought about seeing someone now to address that? Because that's pretty significant, right? I mean,
yeah.
It's handy if you're the one that's driving, you don't want to go to sleep, that's good. But I mean, that seems like definitely something that you've carried through that hasn't been resolved.
I wouldn't mind seeing someone. It's not something that bothers me too much, sleeping or not in a car. But I do understand there isn't a scar over there. Like there is something that I might have to heal. Maybe healing that will open a lot of doors to me. So
it's interesting because, like, you know, with previous guests that I've spoken to, and you go back through, you know, their early childhood, you look at, you know, how they have made themselves and what are some of the defining events, positive and negative, right, that have happened. And I guess there's no real positive or negative, but it's events that at the time were perceived as positive or negative.
yeah.
And some of those events are, you know, things that they are still holding on to right now. And it's amazing about trying to, you know, fully open yourself up to new things and new opportunities and not being afraid. And it's almost like you need to resolve or have complete awareness about everything that's happened in order to be open to everything that could come towards you, right? You said to me prior to this podcast that you were part of a family business. And obviously family is very big for you, and your family got challenged at that point in time. How did the family business go after that? And what was your role, I guess, with that moving forward?
Well, at that point, I was 10, my brother was 15, so the only one in the family business was my dad, plus, you know, the rest of the team. But as we got older, my brother got into the business, and I also got into the business after that. But, you know, there was always something in me that maybe because of that situation that I had to go through, that I had to prove myself, that I had to do my own thing, that I had to go against the odds, go against fear. So after working with my family business, I decided to take the leap and move abroad. Came here to Australia to study English and to try my best. I work for other people, but I always had that entrepreneurship spirit in me. So I decided to go on my own. It was not easy because, you know, I was lacking that business mentor figure here in Australia, which back in Argentina was my dad. So it was like father figure and business mentor figure at the same time. He taught me a lot. So here I learned to trust my ability to achieve things, and to also trust, that there was a bigger plan for me, trust the universe. I feel like I've been always supported by it. One of the reasons, because I went through that situation and no one died. So if I went through that situation and no one died, well, maybe it's because I'm here for something bigger than what I thought.
Just the way that you even reframe that, taking the positive out of what is a really fucking scary situation is pretty powerful. I guess I'm really interested because I come from an Indian background, and I have, relatives and I guess friends that have come from non-English speaking backgrounds before coming to this country, and there's different banter and lingo, and you try to accustomize yourself to all the shit that you listen to, and the speed of dialect is different, so we're talking and it's not articulate. It's how you go, mate, what's going on, right?
I love it.
Yeah. You're like, what the fuck's that guy saying? So, for you to come in and to, one, look at starting a new business, two, learn speaking English, I guess what were some of the barriers that you had to go through and face in order to become comfortable with, one, not having a language that you were comfortable speaking, and two, starting a business?
Yeah, when it comes to the language, I went to an English school here in Australia, specifically in Sydney. So I knew it was just about time. I had to put some effort, and I knew I was gonna get results. I wasn't too worried about that. Of course, you learn, the British English or whatever, and then you go outside, it's like, oof, what you guys said. But then, yeah, you start hanging out with Aussie mates, and you get used to. But I think one of the most challenging for me moving here was the fact that I didn't know how to manage my own finances. And, I was 22 when I came here. And back in Argentina, I was working in the family business, and I was living with my parents. So the first time that I moved on my own was actually in a completely different country that speaks a completely different language. So that was quite challenging. I was sharing houses, with other students at that time. And you get to live with people with different cultures, different, pretty much different habits than you. And I had the chance to travel quite a bit in my life. So I've been always open to other cultures and religions and whatever. But sometimes you see things, especially living under the same roof, that is like, I wouldn't do that way. But that's the moment where you have to be empathetic and understand that they're coming from a different background. And I think that I'm very, very grateful for going through that type of situations, because now I feel like I could chat with people from any place in the world, and I could be empathetic about the way they live, the religion they follow, the culture.
It says something. I mean, Aussies are pretty good at going abroad, but not many necessarily go to a non-English speaking country, set themselves up to learn the language for 12 months, try to start a business up there, try to figure out the finances up there. I mean, I'm thinking, even if I went and let's say I hypothetically go to Spain, right, and I wanted to do that, shit, where do I start? And you're 22 years old. And there are people that have done it, don't get me wrong. And there's a lot of people that endeavor to do it. But the fact of the matter is, you're still here, you're running a business, and you've gone through a lot of financial hardship to get to that. Back home, obviously, you said you grew up in a pretty comfortable environment, relationship-wise with your parents, and obviously from a business standpoint. Here, you have no family, you have a business that's not thriving, and you've got only yourself to work with in terms of getting it off the ground. What did you utilize to your advantage to be able to do that? Because, there's all well and good being resilient, but sometimes you need to be tactical. And were there any tactics that you put in place, or any lessons that you learnt in that maybe you think would be beneficial for someone that's listening, especially if they've come from another country?
Yeah, well, I did made use of networking, started connecting with people as I always feel since I moved here that I was Aussie, and I want to explain this. I didn't want to feel that I was a foreigner here, and the reason why is because I think you put at another level. So I say I'm gonna behave as if I'm an Aussie that grew up here. I'm gonna go and connect with people. I'm gonna go and learn. Started learning a lot about self-development, reading books, and I'll keep trying and learning. And that was pretty much what I did. And look, I got to a point where I didn't know if I was gonna make rent. And all of a sudden, 2 days before having to pay rent with the money that I didn't have, I've got a new project. So that keeps reinforcing in me that I'm supported by the universe, by God, whatever. So I'm super grateful about that, and that's why I keep moving forward with confidence and faith, because I've gone through a lot, and I keep going through a lot. I'm at a point where thinking about having a family is on the horizon, and you want to make sure that you can stand on your own 2 feet, and that you can get your ducks in a row, because it's going pretty well, but when you think about starting a family, you want to be extra sure that you can provide for them. So that's where I am at right now. Yeah.
It's something to think about. Like I'm 34, and like I had a conversation with someone that I was seeing for a while, and due to my own personal, I guess, goals, ambitions, where I'm at in life, like I would have had to start a family realistically within a couple of years, right? And I'm like, you want to be able to be so well and sure in yourself that you can provide, that it's something that if you don't, and maybe you've grown up in a certain way, you don't even want to enter or facilitate that idea of doing it, whether it's for fear of not being able to provide, or whether it's because you don't want to feel inadequate, which is probably more me rather than the other way around, which sounds selfish, but it's true. I guess now that you're at that stage of life, and you're continually trying to grow, one of the things I've seen you do in your time here in Australia is do some public speaking, and going out there and starting to try to put yourself out there and start to talk and start to tell stories. And it's nerve-wracking. It's the second biggest thing people fear is public speaking, besides dying, right? And you've done it now, which is pretty good. I could see you smiling and lighting up. You're like, fuck yes, I've done that, right? That didn't come from nowhere. And obviously that's come from you networking and immersing yourself in the environment. I don't know how this question's going, but the main question I wanted to get to was around immersing yourself in the environment with other Australians. Were there things that you found very difficult to immerse yourself in, whether it was the sport, the culture, maybe it was, the people that you knew were really big drinkers or they weren't, or, the things that maybe you did grow up and value that you had to sort of assimilate to, so to speak?
Yeah, to be honest, I feel like Australia goes really well with me because it's quite a cosmopolitan country. So I have friends from different parts of the world, or Aussies with, background from other countries. And I feel like I maybe connect a little bit better with them, rather than someone that, it's Aussie from 4 generations, if you could say, But I think I adapted to the culture pretty quick, because Argentinians and Aussies, I feel like we got some things in common.
Like what?
Like you catch up a lot with friends. You every weekend there is something going on. You catch up with family or with friends. Whereas I don't know, maybe other cultures they are a little bit cold. I don't feel like Aussie culture is cold. I feel like it's quite warm actually, and I really like that.
The Scandinavian culture, probably something that skips to mind for me, is like, not necessarily people that you'd walk down the street and go, hey, how are you? How you going, to a random, right? they go, fuck, is this person well? Or like,
Yeah.
like maybe he's like a degenerate or has got no idea what's going on or has no friends, right? Whereas here you'd go down to the baker or you'd go down to the coffee store, which is your local coffee store, and you'd, know your barista, and they know how you make it, how they like your coffee. They know your name off by heart. Like,
Yeah.
I guess that's pretty cool, right? That's really cool. Have you had any people that that have struggled with that you've been a supporting sort of hand for, I guess, assimilating?
Yes, I do have a lot of friends that they like it wasn't as easy as it was for me, for them to get used to the culture.
Why?
I tell you why. I tell you what I think.
Tell me.
I think it's just a mindset thing. I think it's not Australia's fault. I think it's their fault. If you move into a new country, you definitely gotta adapt. Don't try to bring, your culture to it and try to change the rest. Of course, you can share things of both cultures, but it's just a mindset thing. I think if they could change their mindset and maybe think that, I don't know if the way I did it was the right way, but it worked for me. Think as if they were born here and start acting like that. I think you're gonna connect with people in a better way. And put a bit of effort as well. I always say that a good way to connect with people, especially from different countries, which you can find a lot here, like a lot of different backgrounds, is knowing how to say hello, how are you in their language. Then you switch to English. Try. You're gonna take the whole conversation and the vibe to another level. It helped me quite a lot. It opened a few doors for me doing that. So I know how to say hello, how are you in a few languages. Yeah.
That's something as simple as that is actually really important, because people are just afraid to open their mouth, and then someone says something back to them and they don't know what to say next. But if you engage with hello, how are you, and you also maybe know the sentence, sorry, my English isn't that great, could you say that again? Right? Those two things on its own, really important to learn, because people can at least see that you're making a conscious effort to connect.
Exactly.
I'm looking at the end of the year to go to Colombia and Brazil, so like I've got to learn a little bit of Portuguese and Spanish, right, before I go over there. And that's something that, I'm not going to do Duolingo for the next 12 months, but understanding some basic phrases is...
Can help you out.
Yeah, I appreciate that, bro. Thanks. I'm super interested in about what you said before, because something resonated with me and hit me pretty hard, which was, you come to a country like Australia and you adapt, right? And you adapt to, or think about how you would have grown up if you had lived here your whole life, and that enables you to almost put on a certain hat when you're discussing and talking with certain people. I know that the generations before me that have come from India, for instance, maybe haven't really adopted that. And so, they always talk about, it sounds wrong, and it is wrong, but, that there's not as much culture here. People get divorced all the time here. You don't want to be able to drink as much because it's not good for you. And all this shit comes up from like, and I'm thinking Indians are the biggest fucking drinkers of the planet, mate. Like, I'm sure they are over in South America.
Look, I have Aussie friends that they don't drink.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
It's a personal choice, I guess. Of course, culture, shapes it in a way. But I think it's about learning how to say no.
Yeah,
I go out and sometimes I feel like drinking, and sometimes I feel like not drinking. I just like, no, I don't feel like. I don't care what they say. I think that's something that I learned living here, and one of the things that help you grow from being a boy to being a man is learning how to say no, and how to set boundaries, and how to set your core values. Once you focus on your core values, there's nothing that will move the needle.
Learning how to say no is probably one of the most important things we can learn. I mean, being a people pleaser is pretty common, and learning how to say no, this suits me better. This is, future future Franco or future Steve would be appreciative of me saying no right now, so I'm going to fucking say it. You know, and that's, I guess, the whole element behind discipline, right? It's like the future version of yourself is going to appreciate you making the move that you've got to move right now, even if it's hard, as opposed to easy. The final bit of a conversation and something that I'd love to dig into is business. You've explained about how you've navigated through your fears. You've explained about, you know, necessarily how you've customized the culture, which I think there's a lot of people that, you know, if they listen from a different culture, they might take a couple of tips from that. And even some of the people that are, you know, already born here, they might go, oh shit, there's a lot to think about. Imagine if I went over to a new country, had to learn how to speak the language over 12 months, if not longer, and start up a business. But the business is really important because we have a lot of men that aspire to want to have a business but don't understand what it takes to run a business. What is your business? How is it going? And what are the challenges you faced?
Yeah. So my business is a content production agency. We mainly focus on real estate, property development, construction, architecture, but we do be and corporate as well. The bottom line is, I feel like your business is as good as, okay, can we go again here?
You can say whatever you want, doesn't matter.
Cool. But you're gonna cut?
Maybe not, because
Maybe
it's...
not. Okay, so...
This doesn't have to be perfect, man. This is, you know, like, that's the point. Like, you just say what you think, and if it comes out right, it comes out right. If it doesn't, so be it. No. But you just...
This is my second language. Sometimes I get stuck.
Fucking now it comes out.
Here we go. Yeah. So what I was saying is, you go through challenges in your business because you're going through those challenges in your own life, especially when you are the business owner. It's a small business, as you know, 27 Media, which is my agency. It's growing, but I would have loved to have, as I said before, that business mentor figure that I didn't. But you get to find, you know, your tribe along the way. You get to connect with people that help you, and yeah.
What's the biggest challenge you faced?
I think is knowing how to grow the agency.
How big are you now?
In terms of
number of people,
number of team. So we are about 4, and we are hiring editors, and you know we growing. I think I struggled a lot at the beginning when I started the business, in knowing who I wanted to work with, and I learned that along the way, through some bad situations, and you know, I didn't niche down, and I feel like if you want to, you know, if you have to get operated, you know, if you have to have your heart operated, you go with the heart specialist. You won't go with the GP. So this is pretty much the same. It took me quite long to niche down and decide, okay, I'm gonna focus on these industries because I come from that property development background in the family business. So kind of like, I understand it's a no-brainer for me. And it took me a little bit more than for other people because I was going through some financial challenges. So whatever comes, you take it, right? So they put something on my table, and so like, yeah, okay, let's do it. And I feel like, you know, connecting with what I said before, that your business performs as well as how you perform. At that point, I didn't know how to say no, and you could see that in the business. Now you could say, I leave a lot of projects on the table, but it's just, you know, I know that in the long run, it's not gonna be good for me. So I say a lot of no's to projects that come to my table. So yeah, that's pretty much the main challenge that I had. Knowing how to grow, knowing how to get recommended by, you know, other people, because they look at you and they know that you got an accent. I think that stopped me a little bit in terms of doing outreach and just, you know, picking up the phone. Hey, we do this, we do that. Not having that help was quite challenging. Now I don't care. Now I just pick up the phone and do it. But I wish I could have changed my mind in the way I did a few years earlier, because I might have been in a different situation now. That was so long.
No, that was good. The biggest thing I took away from was you run a business like you run yourself, right? And if you can't say no yourself, it might be no to fucking chocolates, it might be no to drinking, it might be no to a bad addiction or a habit, then you're going to have that be representative of you running a business. For you, it was saying yes to every single job that came on the table, which for a period of time may have been necessary to get out of a financial struggle. But then you're like, what kind of shit am I doing here? And it's not representative of me. If I say no to it, I open myself up to better opportunities. The final thing I'm going to sort of give you and speak to you, I guess, is there anything that we haven't discussed that you would like to discuss as friend to friend whilst we've got this platform? And you can say no.
Of course, I could say no, but I actually think there is something that I didn't mention, which is, well, I mentioned once, but it's your mindset. I think one of the things that I struggle the most, and I still do, is going into those negative thoughts. Meditation, running, working out, those things are kind of like coping mechanism for me. Like, it helped me get out of my own mind and stop listening to that voice. But I did struggle, and sometimes I still struggle with going into negative thoughts. And I think that's something I want to get rid of, if possible. I don't even know if it's possible to do. Yeah, so I would love to have, someone that could help me out with that. Maybe a mentor or something like that. But yeah, just that.
Well, I'll say something from sort of episode 11. I had Danny Kennedy on, which was the episode prior to this one. And he and I spoke about mindset in a significant amount of detail. And I guess some of the key things that we picked apart from it was around your thoughts, right? And so for me, one of the tools that I use for thoughts are, at the end of the day, if I've got worries or fears that are coming up for me at night, I would write down all my worries or my fears, and I'd cross out what I couldn't control. And then the only things I could control, I'd plan for the next day. And it would just create an amazing sense of calmness in my body, right? Danny spoke about you being the CEO, right? And you're having 20 people to hire. Now, in our brains or in our minds, we have, let's say, 20 thoughts a second, just a random number. Now, you don't choose all 20 people, but you have to listen to all 20 people before you pick the candidate, right? And so with your thoughts, you're going to have 20 different thoughts, but you can opt in and choose which thought you think is conducive for you at that time. It doesn't mean that those thoughts don't exist. It just means that you are the one that gets to choose the good thought, or the thought that serves you well. And the repetition of that is what allows more positive candidates to come through the door. And the more positive candidates you have, the harder it is to select sometimes, but more importantly, the more optimum chance you have of getting a good result. And then your frequency will go up, your energy will go up, the things that hold you back won't be holding you back anywhere near as much. And I think, thoughts are something that still no one knows exactly where they come from. But I'd like to think that it's a manufacture of like your genetics and your past and everything that you've been exposed to, plus the ambitions and the goals and the dreams and the things that you've experienced in your time as well. And it just pops up. Shit just pops up. But if you can be the observer of your thoughts, which is something that DK spoke about as well, you set yourself up to be not your thoughts, but the observer of your thoughts, and you choose the one that suits you.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. That actually helps.
It does help. We'll see how we go. But Franco, thank you for coming on. I don't think I'm going to cut out that bit.
Shit.
Yeah. Because, people see perfectly edited fucking podcasts all the time,
Yeah.
right? And people don't know what it's like to come on a podcast. It's scary as shit. You come here, you sit down, you're fiddling with your thumbs, you go, fuck, what am I going to talk
Especially
about
if you
here?
see all the big cameras around here.
People can't see it, but there's a camera right in your face.
Yeah.
You're normally on the other side of the camera,
I do. Yeah.
right? And you're speaking, even though you've been here for a while, a second language, and you're talking about stuff that you haven't really opened up about before. And I hope that you're okay after this episode leaving that bit in, because it actually allows the next group of men to come on to feel okay if they fuck up a little bit.
Do it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
But I appreciate you coming on. Thank you for sharing everything that you have today. And if people do want to reach out to you for a little bit of content creation.
Yeah. So
Tell me.
the agency is called 27 Media. You can find me on Insta.
What's the Instagram?
It's 27.media with letters, not the numbers. Otherwise, you can reach out directly to me. I am Franco Torres. I am Franco Torres. And yeah, happy to chat with anyone about anything.
Love it, man. Good on you. Thanks for coming
Thank
on,
you.
bro.